All right. Mason came out and he was willing to talk with me. I kind of got him last minute, and so he's been really nice to come and talk. So Mason, what's going on? What's your day like?
Not a lot so far. Yeah, so far so good. Just having a lazy Sunday.
Yeah,
But yeah, thank you for taking the time with me. Honestly, I've been kind of on the fence here and there about everything with religion and everything. And so and you're a very smart guy, and so I
yeah,
kind of wanted to. I want you present this opportunity to me. I wanted to take it. So yeah,
yeah.
thank you for sitting down with me and kind of talking to me about this.
Well, thanks. I only try to come off like I'm smart. Not really. Um, but yeah. So what are you interested in? What kind of hobbies, things like that?
The biggest thing I love to do is drumming. Yeah, I've
Yeah.
been drumming for probably about 5 or 6 years now, and been really getting into it. But I also really enjoy volleyball. I think after this assignment you have here, I'm probably gonna go play afterwards. So just been doing that, especially now that the weather's getting nicer.
Oh yeah,
Just
definitely.
been trying to get out more,
Yeah.
and especially since I'm working from home. Yeah, I'm a recruiter, and so yeah, I get cabin fever easily.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
I want to find any moment I can to get out.
Exactly. Cool. Well, um, uh, Mason, we're just gonna get started with this whole three circles thing, and so I'm gonna be drawing out this diagram, and then I'll show it at the end for Professor Heister. Um, but yeah, so the way that we like to start this off with is just to explain that we live in a broken world. So that's supposed to be like a crack. It's like a yeah, I'm not an artist. Like it's like the math teacher who's just like I'm not an artist. Like draws the worst, most horrible drawing ever. Um, but yeah, so we live in a broken world, and this is like kind of easy to see
Mhm.
because you can like turn on news,
Yeah.
and we got a whole Ukraine thing going on. I mean, we had uh, just it's just like horrible thing after horrible thing, especially lately. We had like just it's like political discourse and 2016 that came to 2020. It just feels like things are
Oh
really
yeah.
bad.
Oh yeah.
So uh, it's kind of obvious when you turn on the news, you turn on anything, and it's just like bad. It's broken and it's corrupt. But the reason why it's like that is it didn't just, I'm only 19, but it didn't just happen, 19 years ago. I came in, it was like, oh man, what happened? What'd you guys do? You know, it happened a long, long time ago. And so where God created this perfect world, and in this perfect world, that's supposed to be a heart. In this perfect world, the God created, it was good and it was loving and metaphorically we walked with God in the cool of the day. Um, but what we decided to do was we decided to do this thing we call you might have heard it. It's called sin, and that's like it's a word we don't normally use.
Yeah.
Uh, it's kind of if we ever do use it, it's kind of like as a joke.
Mhm.
Um, but sin means to miss the mark. It means to go off from what we were supposed to do. And so we decided to go off and sin. And because when Adam and Eve were in the beautiful garden, the beautiful world that God gave them, uh, they started to question: Is God really right? Is He really the one who should be in charge here, in charge of my life? And so, what they decided to do was they took from this tree of the knowledge of good and evil, which God told them not to eat, and they ate it, and they decided to make good and evil for themselves. They tried to determine what it is.
Okay.
But the problem is that that's not the way it's actually supposed to be. God reveals to us what's good and evil, and they're trying to create their own system, good and evil. And so that's what it is with sin. They're missing the mark. They're going off the ways of what it's supposed to do,
Mm.
and they're not fulfilling their purpose. And so it starts off with one sin, and then it gets more, and it gets more, and now we're just in this world where it's just brokenness everywhere.
Mhm.
And so everyone recognizes this brokenness. And so, well, let me just stop there and be like, where are you with that? Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, that's what I was told when I was a kid, and
yeah,
kind of that was the story I was told. But I'm anxious to hear what more is
more.
behind the curtains. Yeah,
Did you grow up in a Christian home? I don't even know.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
My parents were like full blown Christian,
yeah.
and I went to church when I was a kid, and like I think about middle school was when I started like kind of like testing my faith a bit and
Yeah,
like kind of straying away, and so yeah, that's where I'm
yeah.
at right now.
Did you stop like in high school or middle school?
It was middle school.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got because I remember like I got like saved. I went to like a friend's like I don't know if you guys it's called D now like Disciple now.
Yes, we
Yeah,
had that at our church.
we went to one of those and it was like I got like saved there. It was like a
Yeah,
whole thing. I was like crying. It was a whole thing and
yeah,
like so I was like okay cool like Christianity is like the thing and then I think it was just like I think on top of the media and like what I saw on the internet as a kid and
yeah.
like I saw all the tragedy around me and I was just like man like how could a God do this and
Right.
so
Yeah,
it just made me go further and further
yeah,
and so that's kind of where I'm at right now. It's just try to figure out why like God has a plan for these tragedies,
Hmm.
and that's kind of the biggest thing that
Yeah,
deters me right now is that. But
yeah.
yeah, that's where I'm at right
Those are definitely good questions, and Mason and I will be talking later, so I
now.
don't want to address every issue right now, but
Yeah,
but yeah, no, that makes sense, and we can look around and definitely see like yeah, it's broken, like it's things aren't the way they're supposed to go.
yeah.
So our response when we recognize that things are broken, things are not the way they're supposed to go, is we start to deviate. We start to go off into little things and try and either escape or we try and fix the brokenness in the world.
Hmm.
So things you may think like extreme examples of this, like drugs and alcohol. Let's say DNA. Like, drugs and alcohol, those are like the radical versions where you're like, oh man, they're really trying to escape any kind of pain that's going on in their life.
Hmm.
Um, you might even see this in stuff like hobbies. People might do you could do sports, or you could do uh, people like
Gambling.
online gambling. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, stuff like that. So people might just try to escape in what's fun. Um, you might even see people that are trying to escape in things like things that on the surface sound good. So they're like, oh yeah, the way to make things right, the way to deal with this is to go to like religion, go to a certain kind of religion,
Hmm.
and I'll work my way up and I'll get better, and then I'll be a better person, and then I'll go out there and I'll try and fix the world. So it could be just that full blown religious
Hmm.
action. And it can even be good things. Like I mean, I wouldn't say religion's a bad thing, but uh, it can even be things that were like, how is that a wrong thing? Like even just relationships with other people, with friends or with family, loved ones. It might be with a boyfriend, girlfriend. It could be just that pouring into somebody else and being like, yeah, that's the way I want to. Um, I want to fix things. I want to kind of just really love this person, and that's not a bad thing. But the problem is when you make that your priority, or maybe it's none of those. Maybe it's I'm gonna do G and BF, girlfriend, boyfriend. Um, uh, and maybe it's none of the ones I've listed. Maybe it's something else, or maybe it's all of these kind of mixed together, or it's like a little bit of some of the things. Uh, but the idea is that people recognize the world's broken and they're trying to escape it,
Hmm.
but they're doing the same thing. They're just sinning. They're missing the mark and they're going off the way they weren't supposed to. And so it's like a bungee cord. It's just kind of like they go out and then it like snaps and brings it. It just makes more brokenness. It just
Yeah,
makes things worse. So does that make sense? Like,
yeah.
do you
That's
have
a good way to put it right
yeah,
there with the bungee cord thing.
yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Uh, actually, I thought my friend, because we did these three circle things at my church, I thought my friend came up with that, but apparently it was. I like looked at one of the videos and I was like, oh, he's not unique. Like he stole that. Um, so, but because I was like, wow, he's so smart. Like I really like that. And so we see the perfect world God made. We sinned. There's a broken world, and we try to escape it. And so God sees the rebellion. He sees the ways that we're trying to not live our purpose, and He decides to make things right. The Bible says He reconciles the world to Himself. He is pushing these things back and making heaven on earth. And He does this by entering into earth. So He comes down. He comes down to earth and he lives this perfect life. Where we try to go off and do our own things, he shows us the way to live. He shows us that we're not trying to work our way up to heaven, but it's in heaven comes down to earth. He comes down to us. We can't get it together enough. I know my own self. I could not get my life together enough that it would even be worthy of God's level. So he comes down to earth and lives this perfect life where he not only just um, like didn't sin, but so like he just like didn't do the bad things, but he went and actively did good things. He went and healed, and he went and loved, and he went and served the needy, and he did it with kindness. And he there was a big political thing that was going on. He didn't like try and take up arms and like let's just destroy the government or whatever. He just we live peacefully um, and kind, and so he lives this perfect life.
Hmm.
Um, and then obviously you've seen this with Christians that he dies on the cross. And what that is, and all the sin, all the rebellion that we have, he takes it on himself. He takes on the guilt um, uh, of all of humanity. He takes it on himself, and he walks, and he bears the burden of it, and he dies. And crucifixion was like the worst crimes. I mean, they had it down to like a science. It's crazy. There was a movie that came out called Passion of the Christ.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah, and so it's like just getting beaten up for like 3 hours. It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah, it's pretty brutal.
yeah. But the guy who directed it, Mel Gibson, he goes, "Yeah, that's like the most we could really show because it's actually worse than that in real life."
Oh wow.
And if you watch that, that's kind of hard to watch too.
Yeah.
Uh, and so it's but the the whips and the beating up and the embarrassment. I mean, that wasn't the worst part. It was bearing the guilt of all those people, and then he dies in our place. Um, the good news is, 3 days later, he came back to life. And why that's good news is that he gets to offer us forgiveness. He's not a dead guy. You know, Muhammad, Prophet Muhammad, he's dead. You know, Joseph Smith, guy who in Mormonism, he's dead.
Mhm.
You know, we got popes that replace each other year after year. They're dead. They die out. But Jesus reigns. He is forever the king of this world, and so he has been enthroned, and he is king. And as believers, we are called into a kingdom. We are called to recognize Jesus as King.
Mhm.
And so, if he's alive, he's able to offer forgiveness and all these good things to us. And so, he offers that if we are able to do two things. Um, one would be repent. And repent is like a big Bible word, um, but what that means is just to turn. It means to do like a 180. So I
Mhm.
was going this way, was going after I was escaping my life and all these different things, and and I go this way. I turn around, and then believe. And these things are just the same side of or like two sides of the same coin, where what you do is you trust that Jesus will take care of the salvation. That we're not trying to work our way up to heaven. He doesn't say like, all right, fix yourselves, get into like a good state, and now that you're good, then you come to me. He says, come to me, those who are needy, those who are heavy burdened. You know, come to me now, and you'll find rest. And so for us, we are made new. Those who believe, they are. It's kind of like a shining, I guess, guy. They are they're made new. The Bible says in John 3 that they're born again. It's like a whole new person that's made, and they are given the promise of being part of this perfect world. That God will one day resurrect us, and we'll be part of this perfect world. But for now, um, this believer, this born again guy, he's called back in. He's called to go back into the broken world. Um, not to fix it because he can't do that on his own, but to share the good news. Share we talk about gospel in Christianity, and gospel just means good news. It means the good news that Jesus has come, he has died, he is resurrected, and he is king. And he's king of this world, he's been enthroned, and what we just want to come out and just want people to recognize that God has made him king, and he is reconciling this world to himself. So where are you with that? What kind of stands out? What kind of
Well, I kind of like how you worded it. How it's not like you're building yourself to be a good person and then present yourself to Jesus. It's more just like no matter where you are in life, like you
Mhm.
need to present yourself to Him wherever you are, and like no matter the shame and humility you feel, like He's there for you to help with that.
Yeah,
And that's kind of something that I never really thought of. I kind of thought it was the other way around, where like you need to be good for Jesus,
yeah,
like and this and that. And I guess that kind of still is true, but even if you are bad, there's still like an opportunity to flip it around, and
yeah,
so that, and then. But it's just more like the biggest thing that comes to me, and I'm sure every person who like detests this, has the same reasoning here. But the biggest thing for me is just like the logic in it all, and like
yeah.
how Jesus, died and came back and everything.
Hmm.
It's just, I guess I'm thinking more scientifically than anything.
Yeah.
So it's just like it's hard for me to like to look through that and
Hmm.
just understand that like this miracle happened, and like
Yeah.
it just happened, and I just have to. It's just hard for me to understand that,
Yeah.
So the explanations you gave are great. It's just there's just so many small details that like I guess flaws in logic you could say
Yeah.
that just maybe like think that there's just no way, and
They
so
could have worked. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, yeah. Because if it's if it doesn't Paul says in 1 Corinthians 15, if Christ isn't actually raised from the dead, it's like that, like this is all kind of baloney. Like this doesn't like matter. This isn't
Right.
really, and so I get that. I came from a place where I grew up in the church, and then like around high school, somebody at my work went, "Yeah, how do you know this stuff is true?" And like I just started like stuttering, really like nobody's ever asked me that,
Yeah.
and so it kind of like threw me. And I went to like a series of doubt. I didn't tell anybody, and I was just like burdened. I just felt horrible. I
Hmm.
remember like crying almost every night, just like, man, I don't know if this is true. By God's grace, and we may have that conversation another
Yeah.
time, not for this
Right.
thing,
Right.
but for me, by God's grace, I mean, He just revealed how to think properly, how to think the right way, and logical fallacies, and even like things where we're like in church, it's like, oh yeah, and then I had this, horrible thing that happened to me, and then this great thing happened to me, and everyone's kind of giving their own personal testimony. Part of my testimony is being like, yeah, God let me know what logical fallacies are,
Yeah.
like He let me know like what was how to think properly, and what's wrong, and the faulty logic, I think, of
Hmm.
other worldviews,
Yeah.
and so uh, I recognized that as I was in the same boat. I was
Yeah.
like looking at it and I was like, wait a minute, this just kind of sounds like a story. Like this kind of just sounds like a myth that somebody came up with, and
Hmm.
it really hit me a lot. So yeah, we may have that conversation another time.
Yeah.
But I just want to last question would just be like kind of where are you? Like what's kind of stopping you? And you kind of mentioned this already that you're like, oh, just the kind of logic and all. But
Yeah.
would you just say like that's kind of what's stopping you?
Yeah, that's the biggest thing, and that,
Yeah.
and I mentioned it earlier, just tragedy. Like, there's so much tragedy going on, and like you said, the broken world, and like it's hard. It's difficult to me to think that like a God would like make a world like not make it
Yeah.
like that, but see a world like that, and like see all this destruction and tragedy happen, and and just you just have to believe that it's like part of His plan.
Yeah.
It's just hard for me to like just to understand
To
that.
make that work in
Yeah,
your head. Yeah,
yeah.
definitely.
So, I mean, you really, I mean, you outlined a lot of cool points here, and the way, like I said, the way you worded a few things made a lot more sense of what I've heard when I was a kid,
Hmm.
and so it just makes it makes more sense to me. But like I said, it's just all the logic and tragedy.
Yeah.
It's just that's like two of the biggest things, which I'm sure for anyone who doesn't believe, it's probably two
Hmm.
of the biggest things for them too.
Yeah.
So,
It's a
so I'm
it's
sure you had this conversation a million times,
I actually just did a sermon on the
but
on
really,
this. Yeah, I'm like, why is there evil suffering, things like that in
yeah.
my church. So yeah, I mean,
So
it's
I'm looking forward to like hearing what more you have to say about that.
yeah,
But yeah, what this here kind of outlines it pretty well. With the whole story of why he came down, and especially explaining the whole bungee cord thing. I'm still kind of
yeah,
thinking about that. I didn't. I don't know. It's kind of it is true, to think that like we are going down these paths of like drugs and alcohol or something like
yeah,
that, and like in the end you do just end up back where you are, dude.
yeah,
And so you provide really, really cool and I guess easy to think examples,
yeah,
and
yeah. Well, uh, I didn't come up with this whole
yeah,
diagram,
well,
somebody
yeah,
else did, but yeah, I appreciate you willing to come out and talk, and you're always very respectful of like that um, uh, my I know Mason through my sister and her husband, and so that's weird to say. I'm still like getting used to saying that, but he's come to my church before, and you've always just been very respectful, and I've always appreciated that, and
Mhm.
because that's not the same testimony with everyone I know. All of my friends is just
Okay.
so. I appreciate you willing to come out and do this conversation, especially because I got you kind of last minute. Just
Yeah,
I was
of
like,
course, yeah,
yeah. So
yeah. Happy to
appreciate
do
it.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
man.
yeah, of course.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
All right.